What is up? What is up? You frozen in the picture, let it all melt away. Bitch, I could take a picture, but it wouldn't be the same. Shining bright when it falls, shining high when it's cold. Time and time you want more. Opened up and seen doors. As a body, on my mind and heart say, shit. Damn, you know what? Even though I wasn't very good at producing when I made that song, there we go. I'm just checking the audio. Even though I wasn't very good at producing when I made that song, I didn't know how to mix and master properly. I didn't know how to do fuck all. But I'm still, even 7 months later, damn proud of that song. I fucking love that song. It's still a vibe. It's still awesome. No matter how many times I listen to it, I still love it. So honestly, I think I started to love it the more I listened to it as well. Like, in if I was to be real about it. So yeah, that's why randomly I'll just be like pulling that song up out of nowhere because I'm just like, that damn, like damn. I made that. I made that. Even though I didn't make the beat, it was someone else's beat on YouTube. You know those instrumentals that you get, like those type beats and shit like that. Still, still fire. You know, I might have to do another type beat because, like, damn, now I know how to mix a master. Better watch out, world. You better watch out, world. You better watch out, world. You better watch out, world. But anyways, welcome back to another video. It's freaking Mystar, right? Here to show you how to be a Mystar of your reality every single day, all right? I may not come on every single day, but my videos, my topics, my energy, my vibes will help you to master your reality every single day, all right? Regardless. Now, we're here at the oval table, the green Taurus table, the emerald. I don't know about Emerald City because that's like native hobbyism right there. You know, I don't want to say Emerald City. We're here in Nangahere, in the forest, where where the Atua of the forest lives. I can't remember his name. It's either I think it's Tane Mahuta. Tane Mahuta is the embodiment of the forest in our culture, of the people of the land in New Zealand, the people of the land. You know, like other people will be calling us Maori, right? But that's more just a generalized term to generalize the people who come from New Zealand. We had our own people and we're on our own names amongst ourselves, you know. But what's it called? When it comes to this energy, this energy that I've been peeping while I've been looking at, especially with Dolo's videos, Dolo the Parliament, shout out to him on YouTube, especially with his videos, and even just myself being able to see other things based on like using the same similar template that he would use to be able to point out native hobbyism and where the shadow government and the colonizers be like playing as natives, trying to pretend to be natives, right? Native Americans. Not, you know, some people will hear natives and then they'll think I'm talking about like any other native people, like if you're native from like China or something. Like, no, we're talking about Native Americans. All right. So when it comes to Native Americans, they do that on the highest scale. They make everyone do native hobbyism in some way, shape, or form, all the way down to like, um, all the way down to the whole concept of how we have like new age spirituality right now. You know, with a whole bunch of people like doing new age spirituality, not to be confused with actual spirituality or actual spiritual practices, which is like not necessarily even the right term for it. You know, a lot of people who's spiritual nowadays, who's actually in tune with those kind of natural energies and the way that life naturally is, they don't really like to associate, or most, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of people don't necessarily like to associate with that word because the shadow government also plays psyops on everything. You know, they try to play psyops on everything and give everybody like a watered down version of it. So now that the internet's up, you know, they use all kind of stuff. They use all kind of AI, fake videos. They use all kind of like puppets or all kinds of like masons who pretend to be like people like you, but actually secretly behind closed doors, they're actually just Freemasons acting and pretending to be something that they're not. And then they push a whole bunch of narratives, right? You can usually tell because they got a whole bunch of eyeballs in their videos. They usually have like a curtain with the lights, like, but it's a very specific symbolism they do with the curtains. Or they'll have like something in the something to do with like being hidden. So they might even have like a completely faceless video. They don't show their face. They don't show their personality. So all those types of videos that you see where it's like a person talking, but you can't see them, and they're just constantly like talking about certain topics, like let's say history or like people's culture, stuff like that. Usually Freemasons behind that, you know, because what that's them playing out that Freemason energy of like being what do they call it? Being in the dark, you know, being behind the scenes like a bat or like a freaking like a rat, you know, all those kind of animals and creatures that like you don't see, and then they come out in the dark when nobody's around. That's the energy that they like to play out. So you'll see like any type of way that you see that energy played out, it's usually a Mason behind that too. All the way down to the shadow government, that whole concept of the shadow government. You know, a government that's in the shadows. That's not actually the government that you get portrayed and you get told on the news and stuff like that. And then they trick you guys and make you think you're voting for something. But democracy itself is just a front. That's the in the light part, you know, everything that happens in the dark, you guys don't have any say in that, you know, regardless of how deep you think that you have a say in it. They just try to play everyone like fools, right? So what's it called? Topic of the video, you know, they got the whole world thinking that copying and shape shifting is the right thing to do. Now, like there's certain ways to do things and there's certain ways to not do things, you know. Like if you were to go and do something that's similar to somebody else, but you're doing it in your own individual way, right? That's a completely different story. And if you're doing it, it's because you actually resonate with that thing. It's not because seems like the right thing to do, or that is forced on you due to the way the society is run. Hence, the way that the society is today, people are like, oh, you have to do this in order to do this. And that's a whole bunch of copying energy. Because the only reason they say you have to do this in order to get to this position is because somebody else has got into that position through that way, and it's usually set up that way in the system for you to only be able to do it that way. So that's their energy of them trying to get everyone to just be copycats, all that type of shit. But at the end of the day, we're always creating and bringing new ways of doing things in the world. Some people are a little bit more than others, because some people are just like lost into the world and lost into copying and shapeshifting. Or maybe you're not lost, maybe you're just part of that like spiritual bloodline, and you're just acting out those energies because that's more what's in your nature. So you're part of the shadow government's type of soul family that they have, where they all try to play out that Peter Petrelli energy from Heroes. If you've ever seen that show Heroes, Peter Petrelli, how he can steal people's powers, right? They try to make it out as well, like Silas and Peter Petrelli are different people, but really, when it comes to TV shows, they're always portraying the main character is like every other character is like another side to that main character. So that Silas guy who has the same ability, he can steal people's powers, but he has to do it by like physically dissecting their brains, and like I think he like eats their brain or some shit. I can't remember the show very well, but something to do with that. It's very, very gory. It's very bloody. It's very nasty. You know what I mean? It's not exactly like a good thing to be doing. So all of that is a representation of their energy and how they play out their energy. And then all the other heroes, those could be like other people, specifically Native Americans, because they see Native Americans like that, having superpowers and having super abilities, because really low key they do, like high key they do. Otherwise you wouldn't get so many people who fall in love with certain cultures and certain individuals and certain people. That's a representation of them having some kind of superpower or ability that another person may not have. So for people to be gravitated and drawn to a large culture of people or a group of people from a specific geographic location, or even that geographical location itself, that is showing you the energy that's behind that. They have some kind of ability, some kind of superpower, and people like Silas and Peter Petrelli, they like to take that, use it for themselves, and then they feel like they're the ones with superpowers. But at the end of the day, their only superpower is to be able to take other people's superpowers. So as soon as other people who don't have superpowers aren't there, they don't have shit, and they try to genocide everyone every single day. So the more they try to put people under their perspective, under their way of living, you get a whole bunch of people in the world who only know how to take people's superpowers, who only know how to steal people's abilities and use it for their own personal gain. And then there'll be no superpowers or no abilities for people to steal. You know what I mean? Because not like they can actually wipe out all those people in general. At the end of the day, that's not really something you can do. But, those people who have those abilities will end up just separating themselves from all the people who try to shapeshift and copy and all that kind of shit, And that's why you got a whole bunch of people in the world who even play out those energies on a lesser level, because they're like, like let's say like you have like certain people that you went to school with, or certain people you're friends with, and they ended up copying you, but on a lesser level. Like they copy certain characteristics and traits that you have. You start like noticing and being like, hold on, is this person trying to be me, like better than me? And that's just a smaller form of it. That whole template and that whole concept and idea comes from the root seed of what we're talking about now with the shadow government, and how the shadow government always tries to take people's culture and use it for their own, all the way down to now we've got words like cultural appropriation. So now people will physically be able to call you out saying you're trying to be in a certain culture or trying to act like a certain culture, and then you get like white people or certain European individuals that are like people say they have yellow fever or they have this blah blah blah. So all of that energy stems from that root seed of how you're raised in a certain society to believe that copying and following and shape-shifting is the only thing and the right thing to do. And then now that branches out into like a whole bunch of stuff like universities, going to school to learn something by the book, having to follow a certain rules and regulations constantly under a certain system, which like rules and regulations aren't necessarily bad, but it's the way that they're carried out. They're carried out in a way where it's like the God, you know what I mean? The word is God, and like how they say in the start of the Bible with Genesis or whatever the fuck. In the beginning there was the word, and the word was God. That's the shadow government energy of them trying to make their word God. Trying to make their written books and their universities and their schools God. So yeah, it's fried ass shit. But a lot of people don't realize that this is the energies that's playing out. Reason why I even brought this up was the thumbnail. The thumbnail is this photo of this picture smash. Shit came up on my Facebook. I was looking on Facebook and I saw it, and I see myself like a couple years ago. I would have seen something like that, and I would have thought, oh, cool. They're really similar to Maori people. They've got a similar culture. I watched that video though, and I started to see. I was like, nah, that is not similar to our culture. That is our culture. They're just copy pasting our culture and calling it something Pictish. I posted a post on it on YouTube as well. They call it Pictish. Pictish people, they say the native people of Scotland or something like that. And that they used to wear tattoos on their bodies, and that the Europeans were terrified of them. But they said Romans and they said Vikings, I'm pretty sure. They said the Romans and the Vikings were absolutely terrified of them because of how scary and fierce they were as warriors. And all that shit is just literally copy paste of the story of how they came to New Zealand and tried to colonize the Maori people. They said we had tattoos. Not only did they say we had tattoos, right? But with the Pictish people, they painted them and portrayed them with blue tattoos. In New Zealand, when the Europeans first came, they literally described us as blue-skinned people because they saw the tamoko, the markings that we had on our body, which are actually representations of our written language. And they tried to say with the Pictish people, oh, they don't have a written language, right? But in our culture, in New Zealand, the markings, the tamoko on our body was our written language. That was our ability to be able to communicate and portray our own whakapapa, our own genealogy, our own where we descend from. So if you descend from a certain group of tribes, not only that, your certain role in your tribe and your certain role within your hapu, because that's what we called our tribe. We didn't call them tribes. Tribes is actually a Native American word, right? So we called them hapu. And nowadays in modern times, you've got iwi, which is a whole group of hapu banded together. But iwi is actually more of a modern term from my understanding. I'm pretty sure it's more of a modern term used to kind of generalize or group a whole bunch of hapu who are from a similar descendant line, who come from the same waka, which the waka is representative of the mind state, right? This is why in Maori, a lot of nowadays Maori will say, I'm not going to jump on that waka. I'm not going to agree with you. I'm not going to jump on that waka. That's a similar way how they portray it. A lot of people will just think that waka is just a representation of a physical vessel, a physical boat, right? But that's another psyop that the shadow government try to play, where they say that we came from boats overseas. But we always said we came from Hawaii, and Hawaii is the heaven. So it's not about us coming from overseas and what they now call Hawaii or Hawaii, right? It's about us coming from Hawaii. Even people from other places in the Pacific have similar stories. They say they all come from a similar place with a similar sound. It's always to do with a, vai, and ki, or a, vai, e, or ha, wai, ki, or ha, you know, whatever it is, it's always that R-I-E, you know. So R is giving birth to something. I is like going high, you know, from the higher natures, giving birth to something in your higher natures, aka in the heavens, right? And then Ki, and that's more of a representation of what's it called? That's more of a representation of, again, that higher nature. All right, so giving birth from your higher natures, and then again higher natures. So it's nothing to do with anything to do with air, which is more related to the earthly realm, right? The physical realm, or even O or U. It's more to do with A and I and E, you know, because in our reo, in our language, E is I, you know. In English, E is actually considered as the letter E, right? But in Maori, E is actually I, you know. And then E in E, how you would say E in English, the letter E, it's actually E, you know, similar to the European Italian vowels, you know, R, E, or U, you know. So all of that kind of stuff is how we correlate our vowels and how we speak it with our tongue. But what's it called? When it comes to those psyops, they try to play those psyops by making you think that you're from somewhere else, you know, all of those other places. So then they'll feel justified because they're like, oh, well, everybody comes from somewhere else and invade the land. But the only people who's invading land and coming from other places is the European, the white man, you know, the colonizer. So at the end of the day, when they convince you and make you think, oh, maybe we're descended from the Pictish people from Scotland. Now you're in a belief of thinking that Maori are not actually people of the land; they're not actually native, and that gives them more of an ability to be able to discredit. So now you've got even certain people in the general population who may think, oh, Maori weren't actually native, or we were not actually tangata whenua, but tangata whenua means people of the land. It doesn't mean people. Tangata whenua doesn't mean people who came from another place to the land. Otherwise, if that was the case, we would have said that. We said tangata whenua because we're people of the land. We're born from the land. We're born out of the waters. We're born out of the atmosphere, like everybody. Everybody from whatever country you're originally from, whether you're European, Asian, Native American, we're all born out of the waters. We're not from other places. The only time you get that is when people are mixing and mingling and interbreeding through, like, let's say, like if we're going and trading between other islands, which is like probably why you get a lot of people, for example, from the Cook Islands, even though it's so far away from New Zealand, they end up calling themselves Maori and having a very similar like way of speaking, but their language and their dialect is actually different as well. But they still call their language Te Reo Maori, you know, same way we call ours Te Reo Maori in New Zealand, you know. So that will show you that there was some kind of interrelating between those two groups. But that doesn't mean that Maori people came from the Cook Islands and then came from the other island that would sound similar to Cook Islands and then came from the other island. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean that. So with the Pictish people, now you've got people thinking, oh, even down to like certain other cultures, they try to put like those symbolism that we had in our culture with the koru and the all the like swirly wave type designs and all that shit. They try to make other cultures look like they had that. So then Maori would start to think, you know, oh, maybe we have a connection. Maybe we're descended from those people, but those people don't exist anymore. So how can you talk about something like you know what it is when those people don't exist anymore? First of all, second of all, what's it called? The only people nowadays that practice all of those kind of stuff, the only people who actually experience all of the kind of stuff that they talk about how the Pictish people experience is Maori, you know, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's all just an imagination fantasy. And even if you research other videos you'll start to see they don't even know what they're talking about, because they say one thing in one video and then the next video they say another thing, and then they're like, oh well, we actually don't know if it was tattoos that they had, maybe it was painting, maybe they painted on their bodies, and then they're like, oh well, actually we don't know if they were this, and then we don't know if they were that. But then in the other videos they talk about it like they're sure. Other websites they'll say like they're sure. So it just shows you they're just making up shit on the fly. You know what I mean? They don't actually know what the fuck they're talking about. Otherwise, there would be people today that represent that culture and will be able to step forward and say, yeah, my family, we descend from this line of these Pictish people, and we end up doing this practice and blah, blah, blah. And this is what happened with our culture. But you only hear white man talking about it. So whenever you hear white man, it's all lies. It's all bullshit when it comes from the shadow government. Not talking about general population of white people. I'm talking about shadow government white man. When I say white man, this is like, what do they say, Big Sam or whatever the fuck? But that's more of an allegory to the American government, the American Freemasons. But still, talking about shadow government, talking about white man, same when I'm talking about it in my videos. So yeah, as well, you got like many other ways they go into it, like so many different things that they do in terms of trying to cosplay and trying to play the character of, or the caricature, of the people that they invade. So then they can feel justified and feel like, oh yeah, we are these people, now we're native to this land, we belong here, but deep down they know they don't really belong there. Otherwise they wouldn't have to convince themselves that they belong somewhere, So yeah, down to even like, I'm starting to think even like the word fucker, because in Māori we have fucker. Fucker is talking about to enact something to happen, to cause something to happen, right? It's not even spelled with that F-A-K-A or F-U-C-K, none of that spelling, because in Māori we don't actually have the letter F. In fact, we don't have letters like how Europeans would put them, but the European put up like a different type of spelling. Anyways, what's it called? With fucker, you put fucker at the start of a word in order to portray you initiating or create or causing something to happen, And so when you think about fuck in English, that's actually a lesser form of it, because you're talking about fucking, right? That's talking about when you fuck, you make kids, you make babies. So they're talking about initiating and creating something to happen, but it's on a more specific level, like creating a kid. You know what I mean? Initiating and creating a kid to happen. So you can see just based on the meaning that it's very likely that they took the word fucker and then adjusted it and changed it into fuck, because otherwise, why is there the correlation there of the two completely similar words having also a very similar meaning, except in English it's not as broad. In Māori it's actually broad. In Te Reo it's actually broad, and it's actually a prefix that's used to put in front of many different words to cause many different things to happen. Not just children, it's to cause anything to happen. If I was to whack this stick against something, that you would have the word hit, which I'm not actually entirely sure off the top of my head, still learning, but you would use the word hit and then you would put fucker in front of it. So let's say hit is a Māori word, right? Which is not, but let's say it is, then you would say fucker hit, So in terms of that, it's a causing of something to happen. It's a initiating of something to happen via an external force, whether it's you or something else. And then that's the similar way that they do it with the Native Americans too. But I'm not necessarily in a place to be speaking about that, because that's not my culture. So if you want to check out and learn more about how they do Native hobbyism on everyone, you can check out Dollar to Pilot Man's live stream. He goes deep on that. He talks about all the different ways. And there's many different ways, thousands and thousands of different ways. to the point where if you actually figure out and realize how much that you're doing native hobbyism, you'll be fucked. You'll be starting to think like there isn't really anything in life. There isn't really anything that they do that isn't native hobbyism, and especially because the media is heavily influenced, like in other countries, like our country, is heavily influenced by American media. All right, and then when it comes to American media, that's heavily influenced and actually 100% based on Native American hobbyism. So if you're watching and consuming a lot of American media, you're already playing out Native hobbyism in some way, shape, or form. All the way down to like you got like red bottoms. Everybody wants those red bottoms, but they don't know what that represents. It's a representation of how the shadow government walks on the dead bodies of Native Americans. Because what did they call Native Americans? They called them redskin. They called them red people. You know what I mean? So when you have red bottoms, your feet are walking on the red people. You know. Same with the New Zealand flag. How they have like the New Zealand flag, every other country who has stars has white stars, right? But when you come to New Zealand, we have red stars on our flag. So that's a representation that they see the the people of the land in New Zealand as similar to the Native Americans. They try to portray us like red stars because they think, oh yeah, these are like the red people of the southern hemisphere, all the way down to them calling us orange people. So they called us orange people because we're a lighter version of a red, because that's what orange is. It's just a lighter version of red. Okay, so when they put those kind of things in place, that's the correlation. You can't deny it because there's so many different correlations as to why that is the case. You know what I mean? So yeah, when they come to like even down to the stars that they put on each flag is a representation of the amount of like ariki. In Māori we call our leaders, one form of a leader is the ariki, right? And then also in English, whatever people, which is actually native hobbyism, because chief is actually a Native American word, but they'll use each star to represent the amount of chiefs that they took out, right? So I can't remember how many stars are actually in the New Zealand flag. Might be 7 actually, and that's probably also a representation as well, because in New Zealand, our people go by Matariki, which represents the 7 stars of the Pleiades, right? So the Pleiades is the 7 sisters, as you would know it in English. You know, in Maori, we look at those as the 7 stars being the 7 children of Rehua, and Rehua is the star Antares, which is we call the chief of all stars, right? So when they say that they took out all the 7 stars, which I'm not 100% sure. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it is. They say they took out the 7 stars, by putting the 7 stars on their flag. That's them being like in Super Mario, we conquered this area. So anywhere you see a flag, that's them conquering that place. That's them overtaking that with their own energy, their own manifested destiny type. So yeah, it's really, really deep. It goes a lot deeper than this, but this is more of just an introduction. As I start to talk more about this and I start to delve deeper into this topic, so people get an idea and have a foundational basis of what I'm about to go into, because there's a lot more of this hobbyism that goes on, especially with Native Americans. But now I'm starting to notice it now with Maori. I'm starting to notice the little ways that they do Maori hobbyism, and copying Maori people, which they do it to every single culture. You know what I mean? But it's just if your culture and your people are able to attract a lot of attention, they're usually going to do that a lot more, which is why they do it so much with the Native Americans, because the Native Americans are able to attract a lot of attention. They're able to attract a lot of um, attraction energy. They're able to have that attraction energy naturally. And that's what all the shadow government wants to do, because they're not attracted. They're not able to attract. So they try to use other people, use other systems, use other ways of doing things, and stealing other people's energies so that they can gain that attraction energy. But that doesn't mean you're attractive. That just means that you're using other people to attract towards you. But you can't ever show your face and be attractive yourself until you actually start to act out the energies in the natural way. But that's not how they roll. They're more unnatural. They're like that creature in the night that, like how you see in the movies, like with the all the like with those magic people when they hunt down monsters and shit like that. They try to portray it now like they're the magic people hunting down the monsters, and the monsters are all the people that they try to take over, specifically Native Americans. But actually, they're more the monsters. So, you know how everything's self-reflecting. So they're just actually looking in the mirror by portraying other people to be monsters and creatures that they need to, trap and put into cells and kill and destroy and population control and all that type of shit. At the end of the day, you only do onto others what you actually do onto yourself. So if you hate people, you're actually hating yourself deep down. If you try to kill people, you're actually deep down killing yourself. So it doesn't matter what you do, you can't escape it in life. But anyways, I'm just gonna leave it at this, and I'll see you guys for the next video, guys. Peace. Wah 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 wah.